It starts with an itch and a tingle, and then it builds and expands. And suddenly, all at once, my legs won't let me stand. I scratch till my fingers go numb.
Hello there, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of Suicide Sucks. So, with me, not in the camper van, I'm afraid, today, because I am talking to Bobby from Ohio. So, we can't really take the camper van all that way. So, no, we're on Zoom, I'm afraid. But Ozzy is still with us. The little support dog is still here. So, he's sending you good vibes, Bobby. So a little bit about Bobby. He's been an intelligence analyst in the army. He's also been a banker for 20 years. And then at the age of 43, he actually returned to the army. He has faced many challenges in his life, and he's going to have a chat with us about some of those. And one of those includes fracturing his spine and having to learn how to walk again. Bobby wants to share, basically, that he is living proof that no matter how bad things may seem, they will get better. A message we're always trying to push on this podcast. And in order to do that, he has written a book about his experiences called Bobby, There Is Always a Light at the End of the Tunnel. And I am currently reading that. I'm on to chapter 6 or 7, I forget now. But it's definitely worth a read. So, Bobby, thank you very much for joining us in the virtual camper van, shall we say?
Yeah, no problem. Thank you so much for having me. That was a great introduction, by the way.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah,
So, I'm going to ask you the question that I always start with, and
sure.
let it take you where you want, really. But the kind of we don't like to mess about. We like to get straight into it and get stuck into. Can you tell us what one of your or your worst, darkest day has been?
Mm. Yeah, wow. Well, that goes straight to the heart of my book, actually. It had been a long, dark journey that got me to that place. It was more than a day, obviously, but it culminated in this day. Um, it was after I'd fractured my spine in the army and had to learn how to walk again, and the subsequent treatment in the military afterwards. And then I bought a franchise when I got out of the military, out of the army, and I had a really bad day at work one day. Um, it's all in the book, and what had happened was. This particular franchise had asked me to remove the flag that I was given when I retired from the Army. I had it hanging on the back wall of the store by my desk. And these individuals would come in periodically and make sure that the store matched the franchise, which is normal. That's expected. They want all the stores to look more or less the same. That's fair. But the first thing they said when they came through the door is you have to take down that American flag. And I said, no. I literally broke my back for my country, and I earned that flag. It's not coming down. Nobody ever complained about it except for these people. Anyhow, so after that, there wasn't much they could do because I told them, if you give me a court order that says I have to take it down, then I will. Otherwise, it's staying. And what ended up happening was there was a business in town it was my best customer. They were spending roughly $3,000 a month in my store. Shipping. I'm not going to say who the company was, but um, so they sent salespeople into the office and offered him the same shipping rates that I was paying as a franchisee, effectively taking $3,000 a month out of my pocket.
Wow.
And he called me about it naturally as soon as they left his office, and I said, "Well, I there's no hard feelings. It's a business decision. If I were you, I would take the deal because it will save you a lot of money." Um, so I didn't blame him, but I blamed them because they actually violated the agreement. But good luck fighting them. So anyhow, I came, I answered that with I got a deal working at a conference center here where they were selling sports memorabilia, and they wanted me there to ship, the baseballs and footballs that people would buy. They'd want it insured and shipped safely and so on. And I made more money in the week at this conference than I made in 3 months at the store. So that made up for the money I lost from that shady deal they just did. However, I came in that morning, um, expecting, it was this time of year, Christmas time was coming. I wanted to pay my employees and give them a bonus too. And I look at my bank account and there's a big fat zero. They took all of the money out of my account. Yeah. And the reason I was given was that they never authorized this setup that I had at this conference.
Oh,
Therefore, I didn't deserve any of the money from it. So, yeah. Um, so I went for a walk in the park to clear my head and try to figure out what I was going to do and how I was going to take care of my employees. And the longer I walked, the more depressed I got. And I'd remembered at one point I walked in the park for a total of 8 hours by the time it was all said and done. But at one point early on in the walk, I remembered that I had my gun in the car because I was going to go to the shooting range later that day to do some shooting. So I kept walking and thinking, walking and thinking, and the sun was starting to go down. The forest was getting darker. My thoughts were getting darker. Um, and, it just kept getting worse. And I found myself sitting on a boulder facing the river, and I was watching this. I don't know if it was a weasel or a ferret or a mink or something like that. It's some sort of animal like that. Um, on the other side of the river, catching crayfish out of the river and eating them. And he was sitting there eating these crayfish, looking at me like, "What are you doing here?" I'm not even sure he's ever seen a human before, but because he's looking at me like, I don't understand. Now, keep in mind, the sun was setting over my left shoulder behind me. And it was, so the rays of sun were coming through the trees behind me. The trees in front of me opened up and light came through on my face. And I could feel the heat. I could like sunlight. And at that same exact moment when that happened, I heard Carrie Underwood singing Jesus Take the Wheel as if she were standing right in front of me. And now this was more than likely all in my head, but it doesn't matter because it made me drop the gun. And maybe somebody was driving by in a car playing that song on the radio or something. Um, but it it worked. It made me stop. And now I'm so very grateful that I didn't, because my life has been completely upgraded in every way you can possibly imagine. It's and it just keeps getting better. Um, I actually halted the writing of my book back in the spring when I won a cruise playing poker.
oh,
It was a
wow.
poker cruise in the Caribbean. And I'm bringing this up because it's a really cool story that ties into the book and how poker actually helped me write this book. I never would have imagined. But back in January, I was working on the book, or yeah, just starting. And I live stream Texas Hold'em poker for the World Poker Tour. And I do that once a week, and I fill in on other days. And I was talking about the book, and unbeknownst to me, while I was talking about it in the live stream, the gentleman, Jeremy is his name, who runs the whole World Poker Tour, was listening to the conversation, and I didn't know that. Okay. Now, at that point, I was actually thinking about quitting poker altogether. I was discouraged. I was having a lot of bad runs, a lot of bad luck, and my fellow streamers talked me into continuing. They're like, "No, you're a great player. You're really good. Just keep at it. Don't get discouraged." Blah blah blah. And I said, "Okay." So I kept playing, and because of that, um, I ended up winning this cruise in the Caribbean, and they took over an entire Virgin ship, and it was nothing but poker, and we cruised around around the Caribbean in the Bahamas, and I won some money there. I did fairly well, but when I got on the ship, I'm not kidding you, I didn't step 10 feet onto the ship when my phone goes off with this invitation to a private party on the 16th deck.
Oh my word.
And I'm like, wow, this thing has 16 decks? Jeez. So I was like, well, they must have sent it to the wrong guy because I'm really nobody in the poker world. And I was like, they had to send it to the wrong guy. So I put my bags in my room, and I went up to the 16th deck. And as soon as the elevator doors opened, Lynn Gilmartin was standing there. I don't know if you know who she is, but she's this absolutely beautiful Australian woman who is the host of the show on television
Right.
when it's on ESPN or Bally
Hmm.
Sports or what have you. Um, I recognized her immediately, and she goes, "Are you Bobby?" I was like, "What? How do you know my name?" And she goes, "Hold on a second," and she waved Jeremy over, and she goes, "This is Bobby." He goes, "You're Bob Quayle?" I said, "I swear I didn't do it. I didn't do it." And he goes, "Yes, you did. You wrote a book." And I said, "How did you know about that?" And then he told me he was listening to the stream
Oh,
long ago, earlier
wow.
that year. And he said, "Listen, the producer of the show wants to hear about your book." And I said, "You're kidding me." And he said, "No, come on, let me introduce you." And he introduced me to the producer, wonderful lady. I told her about the book, and she says, "Okay, I want to interview you on camera about your book." I said, "Really?" Me? And she said, "Yeah." And I said, "Okay." So she said, "I'll have my people contact your people." I was like, "No, it's just me."
Yeah.
I don't have any people. So she goes, "Okay, my people will contact you." I said, "Okay, cool, we'll set up." So we did it a couple of days later, and by the end of the interview, the producer and the sound guy were both in tears, happy tears, um, with the whole story. And she says, "We're going to put you in a commercial too." So they put me in a TV commercial for the World Poker Tour. She says, "Would you mind having a camera crew follow you around on the cruise for a few days?" I was like, "Really? Is somebody punking me? Is this a joke?" But so yeah, they followed me around. They
Oh
filmed me
my
doing
God.
everything, you
Mm,
know. Um, I felt like a star, like a movie star.
I bet.
And yeah, and they put me in the commercial, and then the sound guy says, "Listen, you have to meet my wife." Sorry about the dog. You have to meet my wife. She's an author too, and she likes to meet other authors. And I said, "Okay, great." So I meet his wife, and I tell her about the book, and she says, um, "You have to meet my son because he's directly involved with preventing suicides in the military. And I said, "You've
Right.
got to be kidding me." I said, "That's definitely somebody I want to meet." And she says, "Okay, so here's his name." She wouldn't tell me anymore. She said, "But when you look him up on LinkedIn, and message him, tell him mom says hello from the cruise in the Caribbean, so he'll know you're real. I'm going to tell him about you." And I said, "Okay." I had no idea who this guy is. I come back from the cruise and I look him up, and I almost fell out of my chair. He's a major general, a two-star general in the United States Air Force working in the Pentagon. And I thought, oh my God, I'm not going to contact this guy. The FBI is going to be at my front door.
Oh my God, I'd have thought the same. Yeah.
I was really intimidated. And then I thought, well, you know what? Mom says to contact him, so I can't argue with his mother. So I messaged him and I says, and I did exactly what she said. I said, "Mom says hello from the cruise in the Caribbean," and he responded immediately. And we've been talking ever since. And he didn't help me write the book, but he's been advising me from a legal standpoint, from a reader standpoint. Um, he introduced me to three other generals. Now, I was on active duty in the Army for almost 15 years, and I may have seen a general once at a distance. And now here I am, I'm friends with four of them on a nickname basis, no less. And Hertz, Odie, and Dragon. Yeah,
Oh
so they
my word.
they were all fighter pilots. They're American heroes in their own right. They all flown fighter jets in combat in various different locations around the planet, and that's why they're generals now. Well, two of them are retired. Three of them are retired. Um, and they've all been two of them are authors. So, and naturally, I drove to meet them, and they've been advising me as well. One is a best-selling author on Amazon, um, and they're just amazing
Wow.
guys. And then this two-star general, one day he messages me and he says, "Hey Bobby, check your Amazon reviews." And I was like, "Okay." And he left me a review that, oh, it was I get choked up now talking about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, an amazing review. Very kind.
Yeah. It's absolutely amazing, isn't it? That, I mean, I say this all the time, but there's no such thing as a coincidence, is there?
Right.
The sequence of events that led you to that, could easily
Well,
have
who would
not
have thought
happened.
exactly? Who would have thought playing poker would help me write a book? It
Exactly.
makes no sense. Um,
Wow.
so the stories, I mean, the happy ending is still being written, but during this whole trip in Vegas, the one comment I kept hearing all the time is, "You have a great voice. You should be doing voiceovers." I kept hearing it from random people. But that goes back to how I decided to write the book in the first place. I was driving for Uber Black, their premium service, here in Cleveland. And as you can tell, I'm an outgoing person. I have a lot of stories to tell, and the passengers who like to talk, um, I would I would tell them stories, from when I was in the Army as an intelligence analyst, or how I was a banker for 20 years, and so on and so forth. And the comment I kept getting from my Uber passengers was, "Dude, you should write a book." I kept thinking, why not? Why on earth would I write a book? Nobody cares. I mean, I'm just an average veteran, got hurt in the Army, nothing special, right? And then one day, it was like a light bulb that came on, and I said, I remembered that 10 years ago, I almost took my life, and I thought, well, that's a story worth telling. Let me use that negative to great positive, to try to help others who might be thinking about taking their own life and to let them know, don't do it because it will get better. I guarantee it. I'm living proof of it, right? I mean, it's
Absolutely.
yeah. And I won some money in Vegas, um, and and now a movie producer's reading my book.
Do you know what I was going to? That was what I was going to say. So when's the film out?
Right. Well, that's the publisher has been telling me that I should pursue a movie, and I was like, whoa, wait a minute, slow down. Let's see how the book does first. And let's see if it sells, if people actually buy it. And the response so far has been beyond anything I ever imagined. Um, as an Uber driver, I had almost 5,000 trips and I had a 5-star rating. And the book just came out. And it's only got 5 reviews so far on Amazon and just a couple on Barnes and Noble, but it's got nothing but 5-star ratings. So I hope that
Yeah,
trend continues.
I am
But
sure it will.
yes, and that the general endorsing the book like that, he actually went to the Department of Defense and got permission for me to use his endorsement in ads and on the
Wow.
TV or what have you. And I never would have imagined that.
No.
So,
We have it's such a massive thing now, and certainly here in the UK, people are starting to recognise that for those that have been in the military, they need their own places to go. So almost every group that there is now that is to do with mental health, suicide, depression, whatever it is, there seems to be now a branch that covers those that are in the military. Because
mm,
obviously nobody else can understand that specific environment. So
right.
it's people are recognizing that they need to talk to other ex-service people,
Mm,
which is fantastic. I mean, there's one called Battle Buddies here in the UK, and there's one called vint Veterans in Need Together. Two of the,
mm.
the great ones, but there are so many more. But it's just
Oh
so
yeah,
brilliant to see that it is becoming more and more recognizable that, they need looking after, you know.
right. Well, that's that the statistic that's out there is that an average of 22 veterans a day take their own life. I've heard other statistics. Some say 17, some say the most common one is 22. But you know what? Even if it was just one, it's still too many.
Exactly.
So yeah, I'm on a mission to try to make as big an impact on that as I can.
Mm,
That's that's also why these generals are helping me.
mm,
And because the General Vaughan is his name, he pointed something out to me that I hadn't realized when I wrote the book. Um, you know, and I'm addressing more than just one issue, and I hadn't thought of it this way until he pointed it out. But he said, "Listen," he goes, "You're addressing not just suicide and that you shouldn't do that, but um, there's a culture in the military, especially, where when someone is ill or injured, it's you go from hero to zero overnight, basically. It's automatically assumed that you're faking it or you did it on purpose. You're trying to get out of this or that. You don't, you're a coward. You want to get out of the military. All the negative things that people can possibly imagine. That's what they come up with, and you're treated as such, which can all by itself drive someone to suicide in the military. And other other soldiers see this. And
Mm.
what happens is they'll have, let's say, I don't know, let me use, maybe they have trouble with their knees. Maybe their knees are bothering them, but they ignore it because they don't want to be one of those, right? Um, so they ignore the pain and it gets worse and it gets worse and it gets worse. And eventually they get to a point where they have to seek treatment. And then it's so bad that they need surgery and then they end up getting medically discharged from the military and it costs the military a fortune, in healthcare and benefits and whatnot. And the quality of life for that individual is ruined, and all because of a culture, a very toxic culture. So hopefully we can change that. And I know it's not just in the military. Uh, People outside of the military react the same way in many cases. And then that ties into the stigma around depression and suicide. Um, it's an illness. When I tell people about my experience, sometimes the reaction that I get is, "Oh, I'm so sorry." Like I'm still somehow damaged goods because of it. Um,
Mm.
but you can you can heal from that just like you can heal from anything and be stronger as a result. So I'm actually addressing three different issues that I didn't even know
Yeah,
until it was pointed out. So,
yeah. And so for you, you started off talking about obviously the darkest day and how it was what a lot of people often refer to as the darkest day isn't always the one that you'd think that somebody would actually talk about.
mm,
And so the kind of events that happened that day to somebody else, they might think, well, why is that kind of the straw that broke the camel's back, I suppose, for
mm,
you that day? Because it's never just one thing, is it? I mean, you
right.
started off by saying, it wasn't just the one thing. For you and during your lifetime, what were the culmination of things that led to that day, do you think?
Mm. Yeah, wow. That's a good question. Well, the book starts out with me standing in front of the house that I grew up in, wetting myself from fear. And that was because I faced abuse on a daily basis. And my mother didn't know it. And she figured it out eventually and got me out of that situation. But I think it may have been when, that caused some psychological issues that have been with me for life. Um, but I don't know. Everything was great. I had my share of challenges. I had a couple of divorces, a couple of bankruptcies. So yeah, I had my share of ups and downs to say the least. Um, but life is like that for everybody. Everybody has challenges. Everybody has failures. Everybody has successes. Hopefully, more successes than failures. But the series of events that led up to it, it started in the military with, I was the most highly decorated soldier in the brigade at the time. And then, the way let me talk about real quick how I injured myself.
Mm.
That was a training accident. Um, we were getting ready to go to Afghanistan, and I was learning. We call it combatives in the military, and it's for hand-to-hand combat. It's called Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. They use it in the UFC and the cage fighting and whatnot, because you better know how to fight if you end up face to face with the enemy, right? So
Mm.
we were learning that, and it's a really long story that's in the book, but they paired me up with someone who's 20 years younger than me and outweighed me by 50 pounds to make a point that age and size and all that doesn't matter, when you're using this technique. And that's true when you're fully trained.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the key part when you're fully trained.
Mm.
But nevertheless, the twist of the story is I actually got the best of him. I had him in what's called a rear naked choke. Um, but they told us ahead of time, we don't want anybody losing teeth. We don't want to see any blood unless it's accidental, a busted lip or something. And don't choke each other out. We're just trying to learn the moves. Anyway, so I had him in a rear naked choke, but I didn't sink my arm under his chin to literally choke him out because we were just learning, right? But it was clear that he couldn't move. And when it was obvious that I had him, his buddies started laughing at him and making fun of him and calling him all the names you can probably imagine. And I saw his face change.
Oh
He got
no.
that 1,000-mile stare on his face. He had PTSD. And I didn't know it at that moment, but I learned. I figured it out pretty quick. And when I saw his face change like that, I let go. And I even tapped his shoulder, signaling that, you
Mm-hmm.
win.
Mm.
I give up. So it should have ended right there, but it didn't. He attacked me, and it took three soldiers to get him off of me. And in that process, he had fractured my spine. But we didn't know it. They sent me to the doctor. They did an X-ray. They didn't see anything
Oh my
with the
God.
X-ray. So typical Army. Here's
Yeah.
some ibuprofen and some water. Now get back to work. Um,
Oh.
and so I had tremendous back pain. And this is really what started it all was the back pain. Um, but I chalked it up to what I call old man-itis. Here I was, a guy in his 40s, trying to keep up with these kids, as I called them, in their 20s. It's no wonder I had back pain. So I just kept grunting through the training. I was going on 25-mile marches with 60 pounds on my back, and um, you know, combat training basically
Oh
with a fractured spine.
no.
And I just kept grunting through it. And then one day, about 18 months later, yeah, 18 months of combat training. About 18 months later, the symptoms showed up out of nowhere. I went on a run with my commander and one of my soldiers, and my legs stopped working while I was running. It's the weirdest. It's really hard to describe,
Mm.
but my brain was telling my legs to run, and my legs were like, no, we're going to drag today. That's the best way I can describe it. The best I could do was drag my feet. And my soldier wanted to carry me back. He wanted to throw me over his shoulder and carry me back to the barracks so we could get help. But something told me that was a bad idea
Mm.
because my spine was fractured right by by my heart at T7 and 8. And if he had thrown me over his shoulder, could have been bad. So
Gosh.
we managed to get back to the barracks and got help, and they did an MRI and they found the fracture. And the doctor came in and he said, you have a fractured spine? And I said, what? He said, you have a fractured spine. How did I said, I don't know how that happened. And it took some thinking and some backtracking, and then it finally dawned on me, wait a
Mm.
minute, the incident in with training back 18 months ago, that must have been when it happened. Um, so the doctor says, we have to do surgery. We have to fuse your spine, and you may not be able to walk again.
Wow.
And I was already under the effects of sedation at that time. I wasn't out, but I had a few choice words for this colonel that I won't repeat on the podcast.
Mm,
But he says, "Well, I hope you do walk out of here again," because that's basically what I said. But I went through therapy and I did walk out. But then I walked into out of the fire, out of the frying pan and into the fire, so to speak. Yeah,
how long was
because
your recovery?
about 75 days.
Right.
Yeah, going through therapy and trying
Mm,
to learn how to walk again, and it was full recovery took much longer than that,
mm,
but to the point where I could actually walk around and do things, it was about 75 days, give or take, and
mm,
that was a struggle in and of itself. uh, Learning how to walk again, essentially.
mm,
Wasn't easy, but I got through it, and I begged my commander to give me something to do because I was an intelligence analyst in the
mm.
Army, and as long as I could sit at a computer and type, I could do my job. And he said, "Well, Bob," he said, you're learning how to walk again. You can't be in the military any longer. You know that." And I said, "I understand that, sir, but as long as I'm still on active duty, I should be doing something." And he says, "You're right." He says, "Let me look into things and I'll see what I can do." And I got a call from him about a week later, and I ended up getting the best assignment of my entire career. And it was because of the injury. And I can't really say a whole lot more about it other than it was as an intelligence analyst, it was the the one place everybody wanted to go, and you
Right.
pretty much had to know somebody or be
Mm-hmm.
related to somebody to get into this place. I didn't even know it existed until I was assigned there. But
Wow.
the best way I can explain it is in this compound in the middle of the base. It was all intelligence folks from every branch of the military and every government agency, CIA, NSA, FBI, and others, every agency you can think of. Um, and we were all broken down into teams where every branch in the military and every agency was represented on each team. Each team was about 12 to 15 people. And we were all working on real world stuff. And we brought down some really bad people. And that was an amazing experience. And they would have brought those people down just fine without me. But the fact is, I got to participate and I was able to
Mm,
help. Um, so yeah, that's an experience I'll never forget.
mm,
And but then when I was returned to my unit for further processing, uh, medical discharge, as they call it, or retirement, that's when the tough treatment started. Um, the I had a leadership actively trying to get me kicked out of the military so that I would not get benefits because
mm.
they didn't want to see me get benefits because I was faking it. How do you fake a fractured spine?
Shocking.
Yeah, it's awful, and
Mm,
that's one thing I wanted to expose in writing the
mm.
book so that it
Yeah.
stops. Yeah.
Yeah. And the individual that obviously was key in the fact that you fractured your spine, are you in touch with that person? Did you?
No, No, from what I understand, they charged him with aggravated assault and took care of it that way. Um, but yeah, that's pretty much all I know about what happened with him.
And how do
But
you feel about?
I forgive him. I don't think he intended to do that much harm. I think he was just lashing out in a reaction to something that happened to him in the past. It had nothing to do with me. So, um, I'd like to think he didn't really intend to do that.
So can you tell us a little bit about how you have got to where you are now, though? Because you say that you're really happy that it didn't work, and you didn't take your own life.
Hmm.
And obviously, for some people, they might have relapses, but it really sounds like you kind of almost had this quite spiritual moment, really,
Hmm.
and
It was.
awakening almost.
Hmm.
That it doesn't sound like you've needed to go back to that place in your head again. It sounds like you've basically changed your, I don't know, your thinking, or how do you think, what do you think's helped you to do that?
Well, it was that one phrase in the song, Jesus, take the wheel.
Mm, it's
Yeah,
a pretty powerful visual as well, that, isn't it? It is amazing.
yeah, that that line from her song just kept echoing in my head, and I took it to heart. It's hard to talk about.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
No, it's okay.
But it's just so inspiring, to hear people talk about what has made that key difference, really. And just can you tell me what that sentence really means to you? Can you?
Yeah, it means to have faith. Don't give up. There's always a light.
Yeah. And I suppose there's an element to that of trust, isn't there? It's about trusting that
Yeah,
whatever the universe, God, whatever your thoughts may be, but that there's something out there that can, if you trust in it, that will see you through.
yeah, and you know what? There were other incidences in growing up that tie into that. When I was 8 years old, I had scarlet fever, and this is in the 70s. Healthcare wasn't the greatest back then. Um, doctors still did house calls and that sort of thing back then. And I I believe I died on the couch in the living room when I was 8 years old. My fever was over 104, if not 105. It was really high.
Wow.
And my mother laid me down on the couch and was I remember her getting on the phone and calling the doctor to have him come to the house. And then I saw the tunnel and the light, and just like other people describe, I was too young to understand what I was seeing, but um, I remember the light fading away, and there was this beautiful like garden around me. And then this man walked up, and he walked up and he says, it's way too soon. Uh, you have much to do, and your father's waiting for you."
Oh God.
And and then I opened my eyes, and my dad was standing there.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, yeah. Huh.
Gosh.
Whenever I talk about it, it's like it just happened. But
Yeah.
thinking back, as a kid, to me it was just a dream, but it stuck with me. From that day to today, I mean, I lost all fears and phobias. I was afraid of nothing, and I still am. I'm still like that. I'm a daredevil. Nothing scares me. As a kid, I rode my bike off the roof of the house on a dare
Yeah,
and
that's a great bit in the book.
didn't
Yeah.
get hurt. Yeah, and the rope swinging on the rope
Yeah.
over the ravine. This is another incident that makes me wonder because I'm swinging on this rope over this ravine, and from the moment when you swing out, that moment just before you swing back, uh, right at that moment, if you look down, I was about 100 feet or so off the bottom of that ravine, and there's rocks and logs and all this stuff down at the bottom, in a little stream that was maybe a half a meter wide at the most, and maybe a couple of inches deep or whatever. But anyway, and I was swinging on the swing, and then the rope snapped, and I fell, and I remember this weird sensation just before I hit. Everything blurred, and I I had the wind knocked out of me, and but then I sat up and I looked behind me and I could see the imprint of my body in the bank of the stream. And my from my knees down, it was in the stream. And my friends were screaming. They thought they watched me fall to my death. Um, but I didn't even have a bruise. Not a, I was wet and muddy, but not even a bruise, for God's sake. So, uh,
Unbelievable.
yeah, and I climbed back up, and to this day, me and my friends still have no idea how I didn't get hurt. And then um, there was an electrical tower um, behind my house. The big giant like
Yeah.
A-frame. Uh, they're about 150 feet tall or so. When I was when I was 10, I climbed up to the top of that thing, and I could have reached out and grabbed one of the power lines. That's how close I was. And I scratched my initials in there, BQ. And and then, I used to go up there all the time. It was peaceful up there. I could see the whole city and just sit and, the hum of the electricity running through the lines was soothing to me for whatever reason. But anyway, the neighbors used to send their kids over to yell at me. My mom says for you to get down. And being the petulant little child I was, or crazy kid, I gave him the one finger wave and made yellow rain.
I think we all know what that means.
Look
Yeah.
out for the yellow rain. But
God, Bobby, I mean, you really push the whole still here to tell the tale to the extreme. Like that the
yeah, well,
podcast is, Suicide Sucks, still here to tell the tale, but you really do push it to the extreme. You're like a
yeah.
cat. You've got
Well,
so
I
many
just,
lives.
well, like I said, I lost all my fears and phobias. Some people are afraid of spiders or heights or whatever. I have none of that. I don't even know what that's like.
Mm,
It's both a blessing and a curse, I think. But and then we lived near these train tracks. Freight trains would go down the tracks all the time. So I decided I would hop the train and ride the train to my girlfriend's house because it passed behind my girlfriend's house several miles away. and I was showing off, she thought it was so cool. I was so brave to ride the train. Stupid, really, not brave, stupid. But yeah, I just hop on, I'd run alongside and grab a hold and ride it. And and then one day, the trains went slow through that area because it was a residential area. So that's how I was able to get away with that. But one day, for some reason, the train started to speed up very, very fast. And before I could react, really. And the moment I realized it was starting to go a little too fast, I should probably jump now. It was going over these bridges over a river where I couldn't jump because it was like 150 feet or better drop. No way I could jump, right? I'm starting to panic. I'm thinking I'm gonna wind up in California or something. And, and as we got across the bridges, I see the what it looks like a pond. So I thought, well, here it goes. And I jumped from the train and I landed in this pond, but it wasn't water. It was that thick, slimy, black muck that stinks like rotten eggs. Oh, I mean, it cushioned my fall. I didn't get hurt, but I was covered head to toe in this muck. It made me sick. Every few breaths I was gagging, and I had to walk a couple of miles back home in shame and retching every few feet. But my mother never knew about that.
Really?
Yeah, I went home, I stripped down in the garage and threw all the clothes in a garbage bag and tiptoed into the house and took a shower, and she never knew. um, until later. I told her later, but
Yeah.
if she knew half the things I did, she probably would have had a heart attack. But yeah, so that's it it leads into today. I mean, I live life to its fullest as best I can.
Yeah.
Life's too short to uh
Yeah.
to be unhappy,
Mm.
right?
That's a great message. Yeah. I mean, obviously you've a lot of people that might be listening to this episode, they may well be, in a really miserable, dark place.
Mm,
You've
yeah,
obviously stood in their shoes. You've
yeah, I've
got
been
through it.
there.
And,
Hmm.
what would I mean, I know this is like a really difficult question to answer, but if you were to, even if it was to speak to yourself, back in the day, what advice would you give someone that is feeling like there isn't a light at the end of the tunnel?
Well, yeah, it never. The first thing that came to mind when you were asking me that is my love of the movie characters, Rocky. Rocky, there's a quote from his movies. As a kid growing up, I used to sit cross-legged on the living room floor watching his movie. So he was one of my key role models growing up, and I took all of his words to heart, and I think that's what saved me. Because hold on a second, I'm going to grab. I have his quote on the
Mm,
wall,
mm.
and as much as I should have it memorized, I don't. I'm
Oh
going to grab it
gosh,
and
no,
read
I'm
it.
always the same with things like that. I hate it. People tell me things and I'm like, I've got to remember that. I've got to remember that.
Well, yeah, I have this framed on the wall, and I also have another. I had a sticker made out of it, and I have it on the wall up at the top of the stairs. So anytime you go
Hmm.
upstairs in my house, you see this message. But in Rocky says, well, this drawing, if you could see it, the mayor of the city of Berea did this drawing for me.
Wow.
Yeah, my story takes place in the city of Berea, Ohio. He's the mayor. I went to high school with him, and he's also a talented artist. And he made this drawing for me um, with this quote because he knows what it means to me. It says, "The world ain't all sunshine and rainbows. It's a very mean and nasty place. And I don't care how tough you are, it will beat you to your knees and leave you there permanently if you let it. You, me, or nobody is going to hit as hard as life. But it ain't about how hard you can hit. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. How much you can take and keep moving forward. That's how winning is done."
It's brilliant that obviously you've got that in the book, and that really,
Yeah.
yeah, it's
Very
profound,
powerful.
very
Uh,
powerful. Yeah,
and that's, I told my stepdaughters, you can't get to be uh, in your 50s and beyond without bad things happening to you. Yeah, bad things happen to everybody. You can't get through life without it. But you need the bad things to happen for several reasons. One, they make you stronger because it's not about what happens to you. It's about how you react to it. You choose how you react. Um, and as long as you react in a positive way or in a way that helps you move forward, you win. And if you never had bad things happen to you, the good things would be meaningless, right?
absolutely. Yeah,
If
yeah,
you had nothing but good in your life, you wouldn't be happy because you wouldn't know anything different. You'd be bored,
yeah. That's really
right?
true. I love that.
So, so you have to have these bad experiences.
Yeah,
Uh, they're meant to teach you something,
yeah.
uh, to make you stronger.
And I think it's like you say,
That's
it's how we react to those things that we have got control over. We haven't got
yes,
control over what people do to us or what happens to us.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah. I try and impress that on my daughter, who's 13 at the moment, on a daily basis. But yes,
yeah.
it's hard,
Well,
isn't it?
at 13, everything is the end of the world,
It is. It really is. I remember
Uh,
that myself. Yeah.
yeah, everything's, it's so dramatic, because they're still learning how to react to things, so
Exactly.
but yeah, that philosophy has helped me throughout my whole life, never give up, never quit.
Mm.
Um,
So, Bobby,
yeah.
we've been chatting for a while now.
Yes, we have.
Uh, why not share with us what's next for Bobby? What do you think's next in your future?
What's next? Well,
Yeah,
I get my first sales report for the book in the middle of January, in just a couple of weeks. Hopefully, I've sold enough books that I can then use the proceeds to pay for the production of a 30-minute trailer based on the book.
fantastic.
Yeah, and then I can take that trailer, I can use it to promote the book, and I can also present it to Hollywood to see if they'd like to make a movie out of it. And I have approached, um, it's called Angel Studios,
Hmm.
and they've responded and they're waiting patiently for this trailer. They're very interested. I'm starting a YouTube channel. I'm on TikTok. The response on TikTok, I never had a TikTok account before in my entire life.
Mm,
I set it up just less than a month ago, and it already
mm.
has almost 700,000 views and almost 20,000 likes. Wow.
And that
Uh,
just says it all, though, doesn't it? People want to talk about stuff like this, you know?
yeah, it's suicide does suck.
Yeah.
It doesn't help. It, People see it as an easy way out, and it's not really. It's
No. No.
you create havoc for those left behind, and you inflict pain on them that they'll never um, heal from.
Mm. Mm.
And that's and then who knows what you'll face after you're gone, right?
Mm. Well,
I don't,
exactly. Nobody ever talks about that, do they? We don't even
yeah,
know.
it might not be what you hope for, right? It could be a
Exactly.
lot
Yeah.
worse.
Yeah. So what
So,
if somebody wants to follow you on TikTok, what's your I will put all the
oh,
details in the show notes anyway, but
okay, yeah, it's RJ Quayle 3, RJQUAYLE and the number
mm-hmm.
3.
Okay.
Or you could look for Bobby's Light Foundation.
I like that.
What else is left? I mean, hopefully I'll get some voiceover jobs
Mm.
or something. I don't know where that'll lead. Maybe they'll make a movie. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah. Will you be in the film?
I would hope so, but I don't know.
Yeah. Well, if you need a
Uh,
51-year-old woman, I'm also an actress, so
okay,
make
fantastic.
sure you look me up, Bobby.
Sure.
We'll make the
Absolutely.
film together.
Yeah, why not?
Oh, Bobby, it's
Um,
been an absolute pleasure to have you on the podcast. Thank you so
yeah.
much. All the
Well,
way
thank you.
from Ohio as well. It's amazing. Thanks
Yeah,
very
it's a
much.
small world now. Yeah, thank you very much.
It starts with an itch and a tingle, and then it builds and expands. And suddenly, all at once, my legs won't let me stand. I scratch till my fingers go numb.